Today's episode is sponsored by Russell & Rose Home, a brand that values family, sustainability, and beautiful home living. Welcome to Next of Kin, the podcast. I'm your host Emma, a British expat, toddler mum and business owner living in Dubai. Join me for candid conversations about expat motherhood, business and everything in between. I've invited some incredible guests to join me this season who you are really going to want to know about. So let's jump straight in. So today's episode is a little bit different. I'm going to throw it right back for you and tell you about my birth story and my experience of having a baby in Dubai. You may be thinking, Emma, that was ages ago. And yes, you would be right, because Bonnie is now nearly 2.5. But when I first started this podcast, I decided to sit down, actually when she was 9 months old. I'm pretty sure that's the day that I decided to record this, just something to mark the occasion. I decided to sit down and record my birth story. I wasn't actually planning to put it out there, but I thought, I've got a microphone now, let's record this and keep it for the future. Now, this podcast very much follows along with my journey, doesn't it, of motherhood and business. So I know that a lot of the content right now is kind of toddler stage where I'm at. But I know I have lots of pregnant followers who would probably like a bit more of the pregnancy and birth content. So this is for you. I'm also going to speak at the end a bit more about some questions that I've been given. I think questions were mainly around what would I do differently next time and what was the birth experience in Dubai. So I will get to that. But let me give you a little bit of background leading up to the birth, where I was, what I wanted, so that you've got some context for how my birth went. So when I was pregnant, I did a bit of hypnobirthing. Part of that course is actually to hear about positive birth stories because, let's face it, in the media, you have a specific way that birth is portrayed on the telly, don't you? And then you often hear extreme horror stories. So yeah, it's pretty bleak. I actually did the Positive Birth Company's course, and they have a Facebook group where people would write their positive birth stories in. So I thought I'd be doing that, but honestly, I never got round to it. I think I've also spoken already on the podcast about my thoughts on hypnobirthing. I think it was one of my very first episodes, so feel free to go back to listen to that. But just to set the scene a little bit, I knew that I didn't want to get induced. I didn't want a C-section, but if it was going to be an induction or a C-section, I would have chosen a C-section. There was just something about getting induced that freaked me out a bit. Maybe I just hadn't heard positive induction stories. I definitely wanted to avoid a section. And then when it comes to pain medication, I was happy to have pain medication, but I'd done my research and I felt quite strongly about what medication would be right for me and my personality and my body. And then I guess like the pinnacle birth for me to achieve would be something like a water birth. I still have that in my head actually, that I'd like a water birth. I'm quite a bath kind of girl, like I like a bath. So water birth makes a lot of sense to me. I did have pretty much a positive experience, or I see it positively. The main thing I wanted to feel in control and not be traumatized. And we did slip out. I did have a couple of hours where I didn't feel in control, but I did not come out of this experience at all traumatized. Now, as I said, I recorded this nearly 2 years ago now, so the acoustics aren't going to be perfect. I didn't plan this to, I guess, be a podcast episode. And I mean, my microphone has just broken, so we're just destined to not have perfect acoustics this episode. And I probably ramble on a bit because, again, I'm not really thinking about the listener journey here. I'm just thinking about what I might want to listen back to maybe in the future. And I definitely did just find it very interesting as I've just listened back to it. So I wonder what my birth plan would be if I was to have another baby one day. Let's talk about that at the end of the episode. Before we get into today's episode, I am so excited to introduce you to today's sponsor, Russell & Rose Home, because I have long admired this local brand of gorgeous, sustainable and high quality home linens. I met the founder Terry back when we were both launching our businesses, and I was in awe of her creativity in creating such beautiful tablescapes. So I am thrilled to be able to share this brand with you all. Let me tell you a bit about them. When Terry started Russell & Rose Home back during COVID, she wasn't just setting out to create pretty table linens. It was all about family. Some of her best memories come from time spent around the table, whether it was growing up, long Sunday lunches, or now creating those special moments with loved ones. For me, in the hustle and bustle of motherhood and taking care of my family, I can certainly overlook how much my surroundings impact me. But setting a table with care, even on a random weekday, it shifts the energy in the home. It's not about perfection, it's about creating small moments of connection and magic. And that is what Russell & Rose Home is all about. They are a family-conscious, practical but beautiful brand with sustainable choices for everyday family life. Russell & Rose's commitment is to eco-friendly, high-quality home linens. They are a small batch production with intentional choices, like using sustainable fabrics and manufacturing methods in an effort to make a big impact on consumers globally. And they have offered us a very special treat of 15% off your order using code KINRR. That's KINRR for 15% off your order. So whether it is for your own family or maybe as a gift for another mum who could use a little extra special in her day. And let me just remind you that Mother's Day is right around the corner. I promised that these pieces would make the most special gift. Check them out at russellandrosehome.com or find them on Instagram at Russell & Rose Home. As a small business, they would love to see how you use their pieces in your home, so feel free to tag them. So today is July the 7th, 2023, and today marks 9 months in and 9 months out. It's Bonnie's 9-month birthday today, and I have decided to celebrate the occasion with cookies and telling my birth story. I also have Rich here to verify facts if need be. But I thought it would be nice for me to record my version of events on how Bonnie's birth went, just for future reference. I don't know, maybe she'll be interested in it one day, or maybe I'll want to listen to it back. But I feel like I've already forgotten a lot of what happened, so why not record it and then maybe one day someone will want to listen. So, starting off with the pregnancy, I would say that I didn't have any health issues really throughout the pregnancy. Bonnie was absolutely fine throughout as well, so never any concerns. I guess though the only thing was that I just generally hated being pregnant, and I had all of the symptoms under the sun. So the morning sickness that went on all day and went on way past the first trimester. I also, by the end of the pregnancy, had horrible hip pain and could barely walk. And yeah, in between, I just had all sorts of random symptoms, any annoying symptoms I had. So that's why I just didn't enjoy being pregnant. But I was very grateful and lucky that I didn't have any underlying health issues or anything bad like that. So that kept me going through till the 35-week mark. And at that point, we had just ordered pizza and the pizza had arrived. And I realised that I was bleeding a bit. And being Dubai, I was able to just quickly WhatsApp my doctor and midwife, and within minutes, I would say maximum 2 minutes, they had both responded and said to come in and get it checked out. So that's what we did. Rich was obviously like, what about the pizza? And I think he quickly gobbled down a few slices, and I was like, no, we've got to go, get in the car. And I remember us being like fairly silent in the car because we hadn't even packed the hospital bag. We thought, oh my God, we might be coming home with a baby. Like, what's going on? And it was like kind of scary because it was suddenly real. And it hadn't really been that real up to that point. But it's like there's actually a baby and that it could be in trouble or something. So yeah, we were a bit nervous and scared that car journey over. We got in, and again, being Dubai, my doctor was on the phone the whole time, sorting things out, but they did all the scans, all the checks, everything was absolutely fine. But it did persist, this bleeding, so my doctor did really try to get to the bottom of it. I think what they were scared of is that the placenta was aging or detaching or something like that then puts the baby at risk. So I think it was the 35-week mark that I had the 2 steroid injections to mature Bonnie's lungs, in case she did have to come early. From that point onwards, I was then not put on bed rest, but I wasn't really going anywhere. My doctor wanted me to rest. He was going to sign me off work, which I didn't want because there's nothing to do in Dubai in summer anyway. So I at least wanted to like be on my work laptop doing something during the day because I couldn't even really go for a walk outside. I was struggling to walk anyway. But it did mean that I just sat in bed for the last remaining weeks of my pregnancy on my laptop and just being an angry pregnant lady to everyone. So that takes us up to just before the birth, I guess. My doctor had said that most people, especially with first babies, end up going overdue, but I just knew that wasn't going to happen. And in the lead up the few weeks before the birth, whenever I was checked, I had like the favourable cervix or like what other things they check for, like a little bit dilated or whatever it might be. So that paired with obviously getting the injection for the lungs and everything and working from home, I'd even told my manager that this baby could come at any point. But in the end, she came on the 7th, which was one day before my due date. Back before that, on the weekend, we had actually gone into the hospital because I think it was for reduced movements. I had anterior placenta, which meant that I wasn't always able to feel Bonnie's movements, especially on the left-hand side of my stomach. So we were told to always go in and get things like reduced movements checked. And when we went in, we had a lovely midwife who was from Birmingham actually, but she could see the tightenings on the reading on the screen and said that I was starting to have contractions. And I said, oh, I can feel some tightenings. And she was like, oh, do they not hurt? And I was like, no, they don't hurt. And so we thought that that meant that I was going to have contractions that weren't going to be painful. We even said it to the doctor and he was like, no, you'll know when they're proper contractions. But it did mean that at that stage, we even went for a walk around the hospital to see if we could get things going and get me to go into labour. And because she saw the contractions, she had said if I wanted to at that stage, they could even induce me and try and get me into labour. With it being Dubai, I guess they're quite happy to do that kind of thing. But I said no. We went home and I was all happy and proud of myself, thinking that labour wasn't going to hurt and that I couldn't really feel contractions. So then let's fast forward to the Wednesday the 5th. Yeah, Wednesday the 5th at 1 a.m. in the middle of the night. I hadn't really slept, but I suddenly had a contraction at 1 a.m. and I knew something was different. So I timed the next contraction and it was 4 minutes. And obviously I sat there and I kept timing and it was consistently 4 minutes apart. So the magic number that you're aiming for is 3 contractions in 10 minutes. And that's when they say you can go into the hospital. And I was obviously having 3 in 12, so not that far off right from the out. So I got up, I had a bath, I obviously washed my hair, fake tan, did my nails, did literally everything like that so that I was going to look great and I was going to be ready for labour and the birth. And my own mum said that she took about half a day in labour before the baby was born. And I'm sure hypnobirthing, they say like 1 hour per centimetre. So again, that would be 10 hours till the baby's born. So I went and sat on my ball and just did all my techniques to cope with the contractions and kept timing them. And we're still like consistently every 4 or so minutes apart. Rich then woke up at around 5 a.m. and I said to him, like, look, I'm in labour, we're probably going to have a baby, so you might need to wrap up work, which is what he then did, which is funny because I then went back to bed and I think that was around 8 a.m. when I went back to bed and I can't have had a very long nap at all, but from then my contractions stopped being 4 minutes apart and started being really irregular. So maybe like 8 minutes, 12 minutes, 20 minutes apart. And that continued for the rest of the day. We went for a walk. I remember it was nighttime, so maybe like 7, 8 p.m, walking around and around, me waddling about, texting my doctor. But he was happy with my progress and happy for me to just continue how things were. I said I was coping, so it was fine. Then another sleepless night, night 2, because obviously I was having contractions, so I didn't really sleep. But we got up early, I think again around 5 a.m. and head to the hospital because things were quite uncomfortable then. So we went to get things checked out, and I was at 3 centimetres. And they say you need to be at 4, maybe 5 centimetres to get admitted. And I was at 3. So again, being Dubai, they said that I could be admitted if I want, but it was up to me. And so I decided to go home, just stay in bed, be in my surroundings. I was trying to do more like hypnobirthing techniques, so relaxation, being in your own home, all of those things that are meant to be good to get the endorphins going and speed things up. Clearly they didn't speed things up for me, but I just went and spent the day in bed, had my, the TENS machine on, which I would definitely use again. I don't know if it actually helped with the pain, but it's a good distraction anyway to have that buzzing on your back and have something to press and like time the contractions with. The problem that day is that my contractions were not really manageable. So a contraction should be 30, 40, maybe 50 seconds long. And in hypnobirthing, they say about the up breathing technique. And they say that once you've gone through 4 of these breaths, your contraction will be over, which makes it seem really easy and manageable. And so when you get a contraction, you're like, right, just 4 breaths, then we're done. But the problem is I was getting contractions that were well over a minute. Some were 2 minutes. One was nearly 3 minutes, I think. And so that started to become quite unmanageable, especially still at home. So I remember ordering a salad that I didn't really eat, and then we head back to the hospital because we were also quite worried about the rush hour coming up as well. So we thought, let's go back to the hospital. I think this was around like 3:30 on the Thursday. Yeah, it would have been Thursday the 6th of October. So 3:30 in the afternoon we head back. And then like the morning, as soon as I got into the hospital, the contractions wouldn't be as painful. And so I'd be lying there and wouldn't seem that in pain, whereas at home they were awful. But I got checked again, and the lovely midwife said that I was now 3.5 centimetres. And looking back, I don't think I was an extra half. I think she probably just said it because she felt bad that I'd been in labour for nearly 2 days at that point. So she gave me an extra half. And again, she said, you can be admitted if you want, or you can go home. And literally as soon as I stood up off the bed at that point, the contractions then ramped up again. So I said, no, we're staying put. The thought of being in labour and having contractions in the car, we'd already done like 3 journeys by that point in the car whilst I was in labour. Like, we didn't want to get stuck in traffic. Oh, and also that car journey, I'd had a little breakdown at the traffic lights to Rich and been like, oh my God, we're actually having a baby. This is really scary. Like, I don't know if I'm ready. But it's funny that I had a big cry then and was like, I don't know if I'm ready. So I decided we're staying in this time, and my contractions had really ramped up at that point. I was really having to like get in a zone to get through them. And when she next checked me just a couple hours later, I was at 5 centimetres. So I was at the right stage to be admitted at that point anyway. And we could hear someone else in the room that I wanted with the pool, because I wanted a water birth. We could hear that woman screaming, giving birth. So that was not encouraging, but but we knew when that was all done, and then I was able to have that room. But they'd put me in a different room. They'd let us just get on with it. They'd ordered me some dinner, which I didn't really eat. And I had taken codeine at that point for the pain. And I don't know if that's what made me sick, but at that point I was sick as well, because the pain was so much that I was literally physically sick. But I was coping fine with my TENS machine, bouncing on a ball, breathing, all those things. So finally they'd left us to it for a bit, and then they moved us to the birthing suite that I wanted to be in with the pool. By that point it's nighttime again, like, I don't know, 8, 9 p.m. And I then decided to go for the paracetamol drip because that's what my doctor had said can be quite an effective pain relief. For me, it did nothing. So then the midwife, we had a different midwife by this point, and she really just wanted me to get some sleep because it's nighttime again. It's going to be the third night that I haven't slept. So she wanted me to have the gas and air and at least try and like drift off between contractions. I knew that gas and air was not going to work for me. And as soon as I took a breath of that, I was sick again. So that was not an option. Rich, by this point, poor him, was really tired. So he wanted to sleep. And yeah, obviously the midwife wanted me to sleep as well because I hadn't had any sleep and I still needed energy to push. So it got down to the stage where I needed to decide, should we fill up the birthing pool or should I get an epidural? And it seemed quite obvious to everyone that I needed to get an epidural so I could at least get a couple hours sleep so that I had the energy to push. So they got out the bed for Rich as well. He went to sleep, no problem, snoring away. And I wasn't able to feel my legs, let alone get up and go and hit him to stop him snoring. So that was not ideal. But the problem with the epidural for me was that the first time it only worked on half my stomach. So for a good hour or 2 hours, it didn't work. And not only does it not work, but it's worse because you can't get up. And I was sort of like swaying and had my TENS machine and everything and was working through them that way without the pain relief. So to not be able to do that, to be stuck in bed, it's not like you have half the pain, you have all the pain just on one side. So that was quite difficult. But they sort of like rolled me about. I think that's what they did to finally get it to work in some way. And then I managed to go to sleep. And a few hours later, the midwife came to check me and I was at 8 centimetres dilated. And as she checked me, my waters broke. She also noticed then as well that there was meconium in the water, which is where the baby's done a poo inside you. And so it can be quite dangerous if they then breathe that in or eat that, because you don't want that in the baby's lungs. So I just intuitively knew that everything was going to be fine though, because there was the conversation, did we need to like speed things up at that point? But they were already monitoring the baby. They had all the straps on my tummy and everything, so they could see that she was doing all right still. So they just let me get on with it. Now, when I woke up this time, the problem was that my legs were completely numb, but my belly was completely unnumb. So I was feeling all of the contractions now, not one side or the other, the whole thing. And that's when things got difficult. And I woke up Rich, and we probably had 2 hours of me really like in pain and swearing. And they came back and the anaesthetist came back, but he didn't seem to quite understand what I was saying. So he gave me, I think he topped it up, but it didn't really do anything. And then I was saying like, get my doctor, blah, blah, blah. The doctor came and he was like, okay, I'll go get the anaesthetist again. And I was like, no, he doesn't know what I'm talking about. And so he went and got the consultant instead. The consultant came and he basically got a bag of ice and touched it like up my legs and then onto my belly to figure out exactly where I wasn't numb from. So I didn't realise that an epidural just numbs you from the feet up. I thought that I thought there was levels to it so that I could just have it wear off a bit and feel a bit, not that it just numbed you like you're filling up a glass of water or something from the bottom. So at that stage, the consultant anaesthetist or whatever he was gave me something, I don't know what, but it just completely numbed me from the ribs down, apart from still one slither. So even the whole way through, like the rest of labour and birth, I always had one slither of my stomach where I could always feel it. And so I think that was probably the most difficult bit for Rich, because he couldn't really do much. I was just shouting like, water, fan, water, no more fan, and swearing and like trying to get through it. But then I was much happier once the anesthesiologist, whatever they're called, came and like numbed me up, even if there was that slither. So then they come and they check, and I am 10 centimetres dilated. And what I didn't realise is that they then say like, okay, see you in an hour. I thought at 10 centimetres, it's like, great, you can push. And I'm sure I had a wobble then as well and was like, oh my God, we're actually going to have a baby. But yeah, so we sort of just chilled out for an hour, but I could still feel Bonnie moving. So even though I couldn't necessarily feel the contractions, well, I only could in the slither, but I could feel her moving down and down and down like the birth canal, until the point where I was like, I think she's about to pop out. So Rich went and got everyone and they came in and they were like, oh, yep, she's there. She's ready. Let's start pushing. And then, yeah, it came to pushing. Obviously, I was pretty numb. So I think I was pretty happy when we were pushing. And I was just like generally having a chat, like making jokes, asking about like the doctor, whether he had delivered his children, and like, yeah, just having a chat in between. But it also shows that my contractions never got that close together, because there was quite big gaps in between my contractions to push. So yeah, after pushing a few times, I think that's when maybe Bonnie's heart rate had dipped slightly, and that's when they said, okay, let's do the drip now to get things, the hormone drip, to get things going a bit quicker. They'd mentioned this before as well, and I declined it, I think when there was meconium in the water, because I knew everything was fine, like just intuition, and I said, no, I'm coping, it's fine. But yeah, when they said it when I was pushing, I said, yeah, fine, let's do that. And then I pushed a few times. I think in total I was probably pushing for like 45 minutes, maybe 5 times. I'm not sure. It wasn't that much actually. But at the end, I remember it being very like, right, you have to get her out with this push. So I'm guessing there was like a cord around the neck or something. I can't actually remember. But I don't think I did that push, but it was the very next push. My doctor had said, it's fine, you can do one more push. And that's when she came out. Yeah. And that's when Bonnie was born. So that was 11:25 a.m. on the 7th of October. And she came out and they put her straight on me, but then they whisked her onto the thing next to me, the crib, to start sucking all the stuff off her and give her a once over, especially because there was meconium in the water and everything. And she didn't cry straight away. So I remember saying like, is she okay? Is she okay? But she was pink. So I knew she was fine. She was moving. So she was just next to me getting worked on and getting everything sucked out. And I think that was quite scary again for Rich, because he was like, right, why isn't she crying? But again, I just kind of knew everything was fine. So I was just transfixed watching her whilst they're like doing everything they're doing to me. And it's just the most surreal thing, because they literally could have said like, oh, we're just going to chop your leg off. Is that all right? And you'd just be like, yeah, because you're so transfixed looking at your like little baby. And at one point they were like, she's not contracting or something like that they want you to do to like stop the bleeding or something, because they're trying to get your uterus to contract and go down, aren't they, to stem the bleeding, and it needs to go down quite quickly. But I remember them saying that and just not caring at all and thinking like, it's totally fine, whatever, I'm just happy looking at my baby. After a time, she did start crying, and when she did start crying, she didn't stop crying. And the only time she would stop crying is when Rich would give her a kiss, which was super cute and the best moment of Rich's life. And even the midwives would be like, oh, how cute, she stops when Daddy kisses her, which is really sweet. But yeah, she was proper dramatic and literally wouldn't stop. Even the midwives were going, come on, baby, you can stop crying now, it's fine. So that was really cute. And then we both had a cuddle, had skin to skin, all of that. And then we got her latched onto the boob. And I remember saying to the midwife, or I'm not even sure who was with me at that point, but I said, can I try breastfeeding now? Because I'd really wanted to do it within the first hour. And she was like, yep, okay. And I was like, but how do I do it? Like, how do I latch her on? But by the end of me even finishing that sentence, Bonnie had done it herself and just latched herself on. And she's probably not really unlatched since. So that was super cute. And I think, Rich, you liked that like moment of birth and stuff, didn't you? The way she just latched herself on. And even after that, then we called my parents, called Rich's parents, called everyone to show them. My mum knew I was in labour. So in total, my labour was about 60 hours. It was 2.5 days. So I'd been updating her throughout. My dad didn't know and Rich's parents didn't know. So they knew, obviously, we were coming up to the due date. But it was like a nice surprise when we just FaceTimed them and then they opened the camera and it was like on a baby. So that was super exciting. Yeah, and then other than that, she was wrapped up in her blanket and she was trying to chew on the blanket as well. She was born at 3.43 kilograms. So I think that's about £7.10, which is kind of the bigger side of average. So after being told that I was probably going to have a 5.5, 6 pound baby, she was actually kind of big and she was pretty sturdy. She could already pretty much hold her head up and would like move her head around and everything. And she was just full of like sass and drama and personality already, wasn't she? Yeah, Rich nods and agrees. She was, very much full of this personality. The way she was like a little puppy trying to chew on her blanket. And she's always liked eating and drinking her milk ever since. So within that first hour, she showed us her true colours. And she was super dramatic for the next few days. So that night, when I went to bed, I put her down in the little bassinet next to me. And she refused to go in there. So I ended up co-sleeping with her the first night. So worried because I never wanted to co-sleep at all. And I was so scared, especially because I hadn't really got any sleep for 3 days. So I was pretty scared that I was going to crush this little baby. But yeah, she's been like that ever since, attached to her mummy. And then what else was funny was the next day when the nurse came round to show us how to clean her. And she basically, anyone that came close to her who wasn't me, she would just scream at. So we didn't even end up giving her a bath because she was screaming so much. She never got a bath in the hospital. She just ended up, I think she only had a nappy on because she wouldn't get dressed. She was a proper drama queen and just wanted to be attached to me feeding for the whole of her first full day on the 8th of October. So that was cute and sassy and dramatic again. And then when my doctor came to see her and give her a cuddle, she screamed at him as well. And he didn't come back. She scared him off. And then we went to leave the hospital and we put her in the car seat and she absolutely screamed the place down. She had really good lungs, didn't she? So she has always known her mind as Bonnie, and all she wanted to do was drink her milks. And if anyone got in the way of that, she was not happy about it. And that is Bonnie's birth story. So there we go. I think Bonnie must have been napping because I'm speaking very softly throughout that. Kind of interesting for me to listen back now, and it makes me think about how having another and how that would be. I mean, firstly, let's hope it's quicker. Let's hope it's a hell of a lot quicker. And I know that second babies tend to be. And now that I know that the epidural wasn't how I had imagined, and that was probably, it was definitely for me the most difficult part. Would I get an epidural again? That's the $1 million question, isn't it? Like, what would I decide for a potential second baby? I think I would still try and go for that water birth. I think that my plan would be very similar. However, have you heard about walking epidurals? Interestingly, I had been told about them, but they hadn't quite been implemented at King's, where I gave birth, before my birth. I think they started a few months later. In fact, if you go back and listen to the episode with Julie, IG midwife, I'm sure we discussed this. It's my little bone of contention with her that she hadn't quite implemented them before I started, because that was the reason I was feeling kind of out of control, because I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything to ease these contractions. So if I'm walking around and the epidural isn't working, then that's kind of fine. I'm not like paralyzed in bed, you know? Sorry, paralyzed is probably quite a strong word to use there. Paralyzed from the waist down, so I can't get up and move around. Whereas if it just wasn't working and I'm already walking around, then maybe I'm wrong, but could you not then just whip it all off, decide you're not going to do this and get in the birthing pool? I don't know. So that's my thought. I think I probably wouldn't put an epidural down. I probably wouldn't put any different pain medication down though, because I still probably agree with the reasons why I didn't want to try other things. But yeah, I would maybe put a walking epidural if I didn't feel like I could just go for that water birth. Other things I'd do differently, I wouldn't necessarily want to stay for so long after. Obviously, I'd be wanting to get back to Bonnie, but I think I stayed 2 nights after giving birth. Was it 2 nights or 3 nights? Which is just standard protocol here. I think it's either 2 or 3 nights if you have a straightforward birth, and then 5 nights maybe if you have a C-section here. I think that's the standard. Am I wrong? Or is it 3 to 5 nights? I'm not sure. But I think that is the right thing to do. Definitely with the first baby. The fact that you're turfed out in the UK same day, I can't get my head around that. But I definitely had got to the point where I was saying to the midwives, I think they came in why do they come in the middle of the night? There must be a reason, but they came in at like, after we'd turned off the lights to go to sleep, they'd come in to like check us over, and then they'd come in at like 4 a.m. And that's when I said, we're going home, get my papers ready. I want to go home now after the last day. So yeah, that's probably a reason why. Or maybe I could just say like, please let me sleep. I also found the beds really uncomfortable, and they didn't really believe me at the time, but I said like, I have such hip pain. And they're like, yeah, you've just given birth. Of course you have such hip pain. And I was like, no, I think it's this bed. And they were like, oh no, like this is literally designed for for this purpose. I don't think it is. But no, as soon as I was home in my own bed, that hip pain went away straight away. So yeah, I didn't find the beds very comfy. So yes, baby number 2, I'm still thinking, could I do a water birth? The answer is probably no, but it's gone far enough past me giving birth that I've kind of forgotten most of it now. So I still feel like I could do that water birth. But the thing is, I didn't feel like the ring of fire or anything like that. Maybe if I'd felt that, I'd be like, yeah, numb me up. Anyway, the second question I got was more around giving birth in Dubai and how that experience was. Now, I have not given birth in the UK, obviously, so I haven't gone through the NHS or anything like that. I am going to sound really up myself now, because I have said since I was young that I just couldn't get on board with giving birth like on the NHS. That sounds awful, but I would go to visit people and they're on a ward with other people. That's the bit maybe that I couldn't get my head around, is being on a ward with other people, other people's babies, other people's family and husbands when you've just given birth. I also couldn't get on board with visiting hours. Like Rich was there from the moment I went into labour till he was walking us home. He stayed every night. I can't imagine having been left alone on that first night and him having to go home. Now, obviously for a second baby, that I don't think I would feel that way, because he would have to go home and be with Bonnie. But the first time you've had a baby, no, I'm not happy with that. And then the whole getting turfed out when you've just given birth, again, without doing all these proper checks. For me, that doesn't make sense. I would 100% every time choose giving birth in the UAE over giving birth in the UK for those reasons alone. I guess the downsides are that there were times that I didn't feel like specific midwives that came and attended to me on shift fully understood me. And that is very frustrating for sure. You want to make sure that you're able to communicate and not have a language barrier when you're giving birth. So that 100% was definitely a downside of giving birth in the UAE. Was it an issue, really? No, it wasn't. It wouldn't put me off enough. And when I say they didn't understand me, like I got the point across, like we were fine. It was absolutely fine, but slightly frustrating. Definitely. And I think that's something that you might want to consider. I would potentially look at getting a British midwife or a British doula or someone like that for a potential second birth, just to make sure that there's someone there that totally understands me, who's advocating for me. I might go with someone like the British Care Team, who I think are based at Gargash, but I don't know if you could use them in different hospitals. But that's just a thought. Other downsides are not having the home visits. So I paid for them separately, but I found that a bit strange that you just get given your baby and you leave and there's not much in terms of follow-up. So you need to, in the UK, that would all be very spout out for you, and you would know that you need to go to this appointment. You were going to have home visits from your, is it midwife, what they called the home visit team? I can't remember. But they would come on certain days, certain times that you don't have in Dubai. I actually got to, I think, day 5, and I was trying to feed and I was in so much pain. And Rich had Julie, the midwife's number, and just instantly messaged her saying how much was that package for 5 home visits. And he just signed us up on the spot, and they could just come whenever we wanted, which was fantastic. So I would definitely think about that. Now, as always, I hope this episode was useful for you. If you are currently pregnant, if you're giving birth in Dubai or anywhere in the world, then I'm wishing you all the luck in the world. You are going to be fantastic. Thank you again to this week's sponsor, Russell & Rose Home. I really wish I could explain to you just how gorgeous their table linens are, but you're going to need to go and check them out. They're russellandrosehome.com, Russell & Rose Home on Instagram, and remember to use that discount code KINRR for 15% off your order. I will put the details in the show notes. Thank you again for listening. Please remember to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. It really does help me out. And go and follow along at nextofkin.ae on Instagram, or my personal Instagram, emmacoulter.insta.